Welcome to another edition of What the Fuck Are You Thinking? Yes, maybe I should change it to that. Because the argument really is about, there's facts surrounding us right now. There's all kinds of facts surrounding you. Okay, the composition of the atmosphere. How humid is it? What temperature is it? You're living on an Earth, continents, they moved around, animals lived on them for millions of years, all kinds of strange and bizarre ones even. Strange and bizarre from our perspective, of course, from our limited experience. The fact that we have a limited experience, okay, limited personal experience. A lot of life has to be experienced through projections and images and videos, ways of experiencing that don't have to do with us having to personally see a dinosaur kind of thing. We can pick up the bones, the fossils, the rocks, and reconstruct them and then imagine them and make them move and blah blah blah, and understand, see that way. And so clearly people on Earth are seeing all kinds of different crap, and they're making it out of the same stuff. And the argument is, how do you make these facts into all of this crap that people think? And that's the dilemma of these videos. Really, is just humans rejection of this idea that you're all allowed to make up your own fucking idiotic story about what the truth is, and that there is a truth out there, sitting there, the reality, the facts, and frankly, we should be doing it right instead of wrong. And it's really wrong to say all kinds of stupid answers are okay. Any kind of duality crap. It can be both a wave and a particle, or that kind of shit. It's God and Satan, blah blah blah. All of that crap is just that crap. Anyway. So somebody sent me a link to this guy's video. So this is a kid. Seems kind of, that's probably not fair. He was 22, I think. He reached he got that far. But anyway, he had some reason to kill himself, but I mean, he used as the rationalization to kill himself the fact that he was eternal and he would reoccur and essentially reoccur in a better condition, in a better future, kind of argument. It's like almost an investment strategy, like you're going to be richer in your reoccurring life or something, and so therefore why not go for it? Why not commit suicide because you're going to be better off in the future? Something like that. Take it with you. You buy the stock now, kill yourself, collect the money later, as your new self. Now, I've argued that we do reoccur in the sense that the basic idea, the structure of a human being isn't that, the differences are superficial, and the rest of it's just some sort of identity, and you can categorize it. All Republicans aren't the same person, all Democrats aren't the same person, but then you can subdivide, and you can say, well, there's the crazy, anything goes kind of, way too, oh, come on, brains. It's irritating getting old. The ones who have no connection to reality, the ones that think there's a free lunch. The free lunch Democrats versus the, I'm all for protecting people, but you can't, you can't be unsustainably retarded in your function and think that everything's going to be fine. You can't give everybody infinite amounts of health care and just pretend it didn't cost anything. That kind of stuff. So you can separate them, and then separate them by another subdivision, another subdivision, another subdivision. And clearly with 7 billion people on the planet, it's not hard to find, list 100 perceptions of reality, 100 statements of fact that millions of people would agree with. Like I could make 100 questions and there would be millions of people who would answer the same on all of those questions. So are those people essentially fundamentally very similar, And I guess I would argue that yes, you're essentially the same person. It's just the differences are superficial, and and not all that substantive. Now, obviously, it's not exactly the same, and there is so much nuance to our emotional character that obviously there'd be some kind of not exactly, but so what? Is I guess the argument. So what? If the substance of it's the same, if the smell's still bad, how bad it smells, that's not that important. As long as you got what side of the fence it's on right. The proportions, aren't that important. Little quirks aren't that important. So anyway, so it's the future that, in my opinion, that's what I'm fighting for. I know my life is a lost cause, okay? I know I'm just doomed. I'm never going to feel good here. I'm not going to feel comfortable and at ease, and all of that crap is never going to happen because the world isn't in a condition to do that. The facts are ominous. The clouds, metaphorically, are they're saying tornado and hurricane and something bad is coming. That's just the truth. Just from the biology standpoint, from my age, as you get older, the clouds get darker. They're getting closer. The lightning strikes are getting closer and closer. So there's plenty to worry about just from that personal perspective. But that personal physical safety perspective. Let alone the more complex psychological ones of having to deal with being a disabled person, or be this or be that, going blind, and all kinds of crap that can happen to you. So, where am I going with that? Probably should get back to the original point. So this person, okay, killed himself, and he doesn't seem to have any. There's no obvious reason for his disquiet with his current existence. So I haven't found that in any of his videos yet. What exactly he's uncomfortable enough with to say I need to modify this condition, so to speak. And I almost feel like using these technical languages because he's really educated, obviously very smart. But it's all bullshit, and that's the funny, it's the part that I find ironic, is that there isn't some basic connection between acquiring knowledge and being able to use it well, to see the truth. Instead, knowledge seems to make people just more capable of seeing bullshit. It makes a telescope, but it doesn't make a telescope smart enough to point to something interesting. So it's looking at empty space and, trying to make something out of it, that kind of thing. So it's like the utility of the device is destroyed by the fact that there's nobody aiming it well. Something like that. And so that's a new realization for me, is that intelligence doesn't make people smart enough. Knowing how to pave a road doesn't make people know where they should make a road to. So it just doesn't work that way. And I don't know what does. It should, just because the process of logic should be the thing that makes it possible for you to store information efficiently. Because you have to filter it. You have to filter out all the bullshit so you don't fill up the drawers of your neurons with a bunch of meaningless crap. You don't start memorizing counting how many buttons are on anybody's shirt, or all the the infinite little distinctions you could find in the world, and then fill your brain full of all that trivia, and then you can't figure out how to tie your shoes because your brain is so full of a bunch of trivia. Anyway, but then this gets into the whole thing of how the brain functions and blah blah blah. and that it is essentially an algorithm. It's, you know, it's not using, you know, it's not physically storing, you know, butterfly or, you know, magnesium or so, you know, it's you know, it doesn't have a little brick of gold in your brain somewhere, you know, to reference, to go look at later. It just has pieces and connections to other things and similar things. And but anyway, but even saying the word algorithm gets into a whole complex subject of how you make these abstract mathematical representations and weight them and all of that kind of stuff. And who wants to do that conversation, because it's not really important. All right, so the important thing is there's really smart people who are really fucking stupid. I mean, you know, just like, what the fuck, you fell for that crap? You know, I mean, it's like they're so, it's just, you know, it doesn't make any sense. Because you're just saying, how could they have the logic to filter their information, and yet they don't have the logic to know that the first thing they should be filtering is for is bullshit. I mean, you know, stuff that's just made up, fairy tale nonsense. All right, so I figured I'd play some of this. I mean, frankly, you know, this video is supposed to be somehow he's saying the multiverse mocks anti-natalists. So this is at least relevant to this subject, but the argument is so obtuse and, you know, left field that, you know, it's not even left field, you know, it's outside the stadium, you know, it's at the car dealership across the street from the stadium. That, you know, I don't know if it even requires a counter argument, because it's not close enough to anything meaningful. But the subject of the other subject that he seems quite obsessed with is sort of the reincarnation subject, the idea that that there's a pattern, you can't escape the pattern. How another way to say it, and you know, but you know, I can't think of the other way to say it, so I won't say it. I'll just say something else. Again, it's such a dangerous subject, because as soon as I said the word reincarnation, you know, people think it's the religious concept of reincarnation, that your soul is floating around somewhere. And it has nothing to do with that. It just has to do with the fact that there's going to be somebody 6 feet tall and with blue eyes and maybe with blonde hair. And they're going to come to the conclusion that life is just way too messy. It's going to seem filthy. That's going to be their first, it's going to first occur to them that this is way too risky and chancy and messy, and things fall over and all kinds of stuff, too much rain on the street and it floods the grass, or some of the, you know, the observation that it's not very well ordered, this game they're playing isn't well ordered. It's not well structured. There's no deserve has anything to do with it. That's going to be another big one. They're going to, you know, it's going to arrive as an understanding to them that you can't earn your way through this life. You're going to have to get lucky, you know, and you're going to have to be a thief probably. You know, you're going to have to do things that, you know, aren't ethically right or fair to win, because you're not going to otherwise. You're going to have to cut corners and cheat here and there, or you're going to be out of luck because the odds are against you. The probabilities, the way the game plays is just not by those good rules. There's no good rules to play by. Not many, anyway. No clear correlation between thoughtfulness and good outcomes. Yeah, the world doesn't, we didn't make a society that works that way. That rewards thoughtful and you know, the reasonable approach to playing the game. Caution, you know, no, we don't reward that. And fear, of course, you don't reward that. So, yeah, and so the game you're playing is not just this game, this edition, okay? You're going to be playing again, so to speak. There's going to be consciousness, and it's going to be in some form that you might call similar, and it's going to be stuck here playing. So it's like you having a clone, and so we clone you, okay, as you are now, with the intelligence you have now, and then we shoot you, okay, and your clone plays, and then the same thing happens to that clone. We, clone him and then shoot him, and then the clone plays. The version. And so that's all this is, really, right? And so you understand that, well, I understand my configuration, and if you clone it, it's going to be me, essentially. And the trauma is going to be real and all that kind of crap, blah, 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 blah. And so now we're really just talking about how much allowance you allow in distinctions or differences or flaws in the clone. So the clone won't be perfect, right? It's not going to be a perfect copy. How imperfect does it have to be before, for you to say, I don't recognize me anymore? And that's all the argument's really going to be about. It's that I don't recognize the me in that brain anymore. And even that way of perceiving it is kind of ridiculous, just because it's almost like, what change could you make that would change the fact that it's a sentient organism that's going to experience pain and suffering, so humiliations, and that it's going to be causing effects in the world that you might be embarrassed by. It's going to be one of those people throwing garbage out their window. Do you want to be one of those people? Ooh. Yeah, I mean, people are just so grotesquely rude. Ooh. That's frightening. That's really what I'm talking about. And those are going to be real lives and real consciousnesses, real renditions of the game player. And so it should be in your incentive and interest to understand that it might as well be you. Yes, you're going to die, but there's going to be might as well be youers who are going to live and continue to live. And the future's, theoretically a bigger place than your life. Your one little life isn't much of the story. Their story is really extensive. It goes into all these other lives and all this other stuff going on. So it would be kind of illogical, all right, for you to think that you win and they can lose. That wouldn't be too smart. Or to think that if there's a scale here and the scale is measuring your comfort versus the welfare of the future, I mean, for you to understand that the welfare of the future weighs so much more than you, and so much more important. And if you're going to, maximize your utility, you really have to have your utility pointed towards making sure you don't dump any lead paint into one of the Great Lakes or something. He drowned himself in Lake Michigan. I guess that's why it came to mind. Which, I found it I remember I swam in Lake Michigan once. It was kind of cold. That's my memory anyway. It wasn't very warm water. It was summer and it was cold. Anyway, yeah, so I'll play some of the video. I think that's probably enough of a premise, I suppose. You're not really going to understand without watching some of his videos, I suppose. I mean, it's all this. You really got lost in all of the quantum woo of multiverses and entanglements and all this horse shit. And we're living in a simulation, even though that, again, he sort of has half the logic. He talks about how the intelligent people are the ones more likely to make the simulation, all right, and that somehow that means it's more probable you'll be in a sensible simulation but that again assumes intelligent people have some notion of what a good life is, when apparently they don't. And they keep defending crap and mechanisms that don't make lives, that aren't likely to produce a better future. That doesn't seem to be the agenda of the intelligent. They play video games, frankly. They get lost in absolute bullshit. Let's just play some of this and see what it goes. I'm just trying to think. I'm just want to make sure I've covered my bases. Is that, when you're arguing this pro-life argument, you're arguing a pro-life argument that you want to live these lives, that you want to be born in Bangladesh, and you want to do all of this, struggle stuff that's going on for so many humans, the majority of humans. for some slight chance that you might get to be a slave owner for a while, instead of a slave. And that you really think these lives aren't, that the average life you see in the world isn't much less than your life. I mean, if you're watching these videos, you probably have a more privileged life than the real humans that occupy Earth. The ones you're really defending as a place to play the game from. It's not like you get to show up and just be the hero, at the game, okay, the life game. The real game is all of the other crap that's going into the game. All of the fans with their sponge fingers and their hot dogs and that's the game. And it's such a low performance. Again, I can't think that people really think they want to be these people. If you're a Christian kook, do you want to be the Muslim fanatic? Because those lives are really going to happen. Those consciousnesses are really going to play the game. That's the game you're endorsing, is arriving as one of these fucktards.
Sort of anti-natalist objection to having kids, it doesn't undercut it in the sort of sense of virtue. I mean, in the same way that it might be virtuous to not, stab someone randomly. It's virtuous, but does it really make a difference at the ultimate level? Not really. I mean,
yeah, it does, frankly. But this idea of people saying I'm anti-natalist, like almost saying I don't rape any women, but I don't do anything to stop rapists. Well, that doesn't do anything. So as far as you take your anti-natalism is, I personally won't have a baby, well, then it's not going to be very effective anti-natalism. Okay, I mean, yes, it's one less banana peel on the sidewalk, but if you keep letting other people throw the banana peels and they're already 3 inches high, well, then it's not going to matter. So if the banana peels are already 3 inches high, one more, it just makes the banana, it almost has the opposite effect. Makes the banana peels that are on the road less effective. Ironically, when you're already past saturation. So, anything, once we're past, there's only two sides here. There's declining population and increasing population. They're just, and so in that environment, your reductionism doesn't do any good. I mean, if we're already on the wrong side of that equation, you saying, well, I didn't add to it. Well, so what? You've guaranteed the future. I mean, the future's already still guaranteed. So until you stop the future from being guaranteed to have kids in it, you really haven't done anything.
You're making epsilon difference in the multiverse. The multiverse has at least 3 levels. You've got an infinite amount of mind configurations. You've got the first level, which is just the universe doesn't end at a Hubble volume.
Oh yeah, so that's where it really, it really goes south of south. It's the multiverse, and then having an infinite number of multiverses and an infinite number of permutations. But why exactly he thought his configuration, that is the idea that him, whatever that is, was somehow going to be durable, like again in any kind of really meaningful way, like that the idea of being intelligent would mean this is what intelligence looks like. When I would argue this is the opposite of what intelligence looks like, because intelligence doesn't fall for all this mush. So it's like he would be a reoccurrence in a form that would be exactly facing him oppositely and saying, God, you're so full of shit. Even though their IQs are the same, the ideological battle didn't change any, and he's still going to be on the wrong side.
So no cosmologist thinks that from the center at which you're located, when you go out to however far light is going to reach in 3 dimensions, that's where the universe ends. No one thinks that. So you've got another Hubble volume and another Hubble volume, and it's infinite. And this is implied.
That's kind of nasty to put Hubble's name on all of this crap too, just because he didn't really buy into any of this crap. He thought, he didn't even think the universe was expanding. Um, so it's kind of, this is part of the storytelling, is to steal the identity of characters and force them to become endorsers of the crap. Put Newton's name on kinetic energy, put Einstein's name on entanglement, or gravitational waves, when he would have argued it was horseshit.
By the fact that the universe seems to be flat, and flat not in not in the sense that it's two-dimensional, but in the sense that its topology is flat, and matter is evenly distributed across the entire thing. So you exist in this thing which is infinite in extent, probably. It certainly doesn't end at a Hubble volume. It's very big, and therefore contains so many.
So again, it's just more blah blah. That this, anybody could just say, you can make exactly the opposite argument. There's just not enough evidence to play with the infinity argument. What seems pretty clear is evolution isn't infinite, in the sense that there was a first cell. Okay, I mean a first DNA molecule. Where it actually had enough components to be replicatable, let's just say. So there were first events, and you could argue that evolution, there's no reason to think that evolution of the chemistry itself isn't exactly the same process. There was a first hydrogen atom, and it had to be made out of the mix that existed before that, the composition, and the composition evolves down. And you could say there's a point where, it was the difference between nothing and something. That argument could be made just as there's no evidence, and so all you're arguing is theoretical rules about having continuity in laws, some kind of law of the universe, how it works. And so again, you're stuck with the idea of anything that could have happened, or any events that would have happened. The definition of is just, well, is there a God? I mean, that is there something? Did the intelligence pre-exist the crude laws that govern the process? And of course, it'd be kind of silly to think so. And I would also say it would be overtly silly for this person to think there would be any intelligence that would make in a simulation this sloppy. That's like saying the intelligence would wear a hat on their butt or something, or just doesn't make hats on their feet and shoes on their head. No, of course they wouldn't make a sloppy simulation or a dangerous simulation or any of that kind of crap. So the very fact that we're existing in this uncomfortable state kind of dictates that this isn't a simulation, because nothing intelligent enough to make a simulation would be stupid enough to make a bad one, and especially a dangerously bad one.
Mind configurations and copies and near copies of everything that you see around you. That's just a level 1 multiverse. The level 2 multiverse has to do with chaotic inflation, also known as eternal inflation, which just postulates that there are universes with different physical constants that are bubbling constantly, being formed, and that's just
wow, spectacular bullshit there. Just no good reason to believe any of that crap. I mean, there's just no good reason. You can just make up animals. I could make up an animal, and say there's a 5-legged, pig-like animal that has, a big giant antenna, with a little steel ball at the end, and it whacks the animals, the predator animals that are coming to a jump on it and attack it and pounce it. And, I mean, I could just make shit up, but there's no realistic expectation that something I just made up because I could, because the space is foggy enough. The drawing, the painting space is so disorganized that I can almost organize it into anything. I can make the argument, the ink blot argument, that it's almost anything. But why this crap?
Application of the Big Bang Theory. Like, in order to have the Big Bang Theory be consistent, you need inflation. And that was proposed by Alan Guth way back in like the 1990s. And most cosmologists who study this pretty much are still on board with eternal inflation and therefore the Big Bang. So you're going to have a multiverse on 2 levels already. That's level 1, that's level 2. On the level 3, it's just saying...
Yeah, whatever. So, I at different points in my youth, I had 3 theories, theories that, involved... Maybe there's got to be some sort of number that's the universe is recycling, some sort of mechanism that's causing the order, blah 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 blah. But yeah, that I survived long enough to say, oh shit, was I ever full of shit? So that would be the interesting thing. It'd be really just great if we could do all of these really interesting. If we could see the universe in all these other forms, like if you could actually let this guy live and then take the older form and have him have a conversation with the 40-year younger self, because I think for most people those are going to be really dramatically different characters. For me, not so much. Yeah, no. Obviously I have gained some perspective that I didn't have at 20. And I have answers I didn't have at 20. So I definitely would have something to talk about.
And that the wave function doesn't collapse. So you have the Schrödinger equation, and it's just describing reality. You don't have to postulate that solipsism so that consciousness collapses away.
It doesn't describe reality, so that's just such a silly thing. It's a symbol for reality. They just drew a symbol and said, well, that's reality in all of its features. Okay, so we'll just have a little forky thing and say, yeah, that's everything. That's all knowledge. It doesn't describe or say anything. It just tells you that if you know everything, then you know everything. That knowing everything equals knowing everything. I couldn't figure that out on my own.
Function. You don't say that. You just say the Schrödinger equation describes something which is just real. And so that, observers are going to find themselves where they find themselves. It's not a matter of one single reality existing as opposed to all the other ones, where you find up quark as opposed to down quark. You find both of them. One observer.
So just amazing how he has all of this jargon, all of the little bits of the crapola, and he has kind of extensive knowledge about all aspects of this crap, this crap physics, and somehow that's woven into some underlying understanding that I don't want to hang around. That'd be a good idea to get the hell out of here. And you're just wondering how the two are, exactly how you turn one into the other. I don't think you do. You just use one as an excuse to find a road out, and that's what he did. So he used quantum mechanics to find a rationalization that says it makes sense to get the hell out of here. So here's the road, take it. But it is all kind of strange and bizarre. The anime drawing over there, you just wonder. So that's the other thing. Is he's fairly good renderer, artist, if you want to call it that. Just could be described as a potential. He has the potential to be whatever those Renaissance people are. The Renaissance man. It's sort of there, and it decided fuck it, which is kind of funny. I mean, ironically funny.
For each, and from each location, the observer can't tell that he's in the other location also. So that's 3 levels to the multiverse right there, you're going to have an infinite amount of mind configurations, and you're going to have an infinite amount of experiences. So if you have like lust for...
So again, it's not going to happen, this infinite thing, so that's just silly. There's a lot of people on Earth right now, so from our mechanical perspective, our ability to hold it in our brain and look at it, 7 billion, you can't really look at it. Can't really get how much that is, and all of the potential variation in that, again, is what I'm arguing is going to fool you. You're going to think there's 7 billion varieties, and there's not really 7 billion varieties. It's really just it's like color mixing, you could almost argue. There's just going to be primary functions, and they're going to be in different mixtures of those primary religious, not religious, those kind of questions. And once you answer all those questions with the yes, it has that feature, no, it doesn't have that feature, you'll kind of be able to describe what you have as a person in a general way.
Qualia, lust for a variety of experiences, rest assured you're going to have all experiences that you can have. So it doesn't really make a difference if you add another variety of experiences, like having some child, because, the father is the son. In the same way that, if you perform some action, and for example, you enlist in the military, and then 5 years down the line, there's an experience here that's in Japan. That is in no way you. That is just its own experience. It is not this experience by its physical configuration. In that same way,
This is some kind of bizarre connection to the fact that you're creating new universes, and so the person that you were isn't ever any of these other experiences, and they're new human beings or something. So it's like the clone argument, you make a clone and one clone stops existing, the other one starts existing. Is it really not you? I'd argue it's pretty much you.
Having some child, that's just another physical configuration. It's not you. Unless you're assuming that souls actually exist, that by having been in a womb, this has gained a different soul. And so that's Christian or Islamic metaphysics. That's just not physical. So a physical view...
Again, but so he's sort of arguing that somehow, like I said, if I did clone my brain, my whole configuration as I am right now, it is me. So there's just no, why would I argue, or why would I quibble with myself about saying which one of us is real? I mean, that would be retarded. To sit there and argue with myself about who's real. So the concession has to be that it will be me, and whether it's A or B, me, which one I send to Japan or which one I send to be in the military can't make any difference. So, I think that's just a bizarre abstraction to say that somehow identity doesn't... I don't know how meaningful it is, but I mean, to argue that it doesn't transfer, of course it does.
Is that these are all not you. Or they are all you, whatever you want to say.
There you go.
But you're certainly not...
Yes, they're all me, that's right, yes. But the son certainly isn't. The child is obviously a whole different genetic person, so it's going to have different levels of emotions, and it's going to have all kinds of... And it hasn't gained any of the knowledge I have or perspective I have, or any of the little quirks of my psychology that say... don't look, or look, or the control mechanisms. It's not going to have any of those yet, so it's going to have to develop its own. So it hasn't gone through the experience of being subjected to all of the kicks and the slings and the arrows of finding your place, and the accidents, all the little burns and all the little stabs and all the jabs and all of the mistakes and all of the sadnesses and all of that crap haven't yet conditioned to psychology. So it's still meanness in the sense that it's a conscious human, okay, and I might identify with it in some way because it somehow looks similar, but get real. The differences are still extant in the sense that it's not going to be any more me than somebody who grew up in another country and did have experiences similar to mine and didn't acquire my understanding through those experiences.
Creating brand new souls that wouldn't have existed otherwise. So, on an ultimate level, you have no argument. You're not making a difference. On a present, kind of, just virtue level discussion, is it virtuous to abstain from creating minds that are...
Right. So obviously, if there's somebody who's anti-natalist, it's just the rape argument. If you're anti-rape by saying, I will not rape anyone, I would argue you're useless. Okay, not really a meaningful statement. I won't be ludicrously evil, or stupid, or mean, or all that stuff. It's not much of a political statement. It's not much of you're not likely to have much of an impact in saying, you're not going to stop feeding the sharks by you not swimming in the water. You have to stop the other people from swimming in the water. Logically, obviously. So, it doesn't mean much. There should be two words, I guess, for any cause. Those who think the principles are universal and should be imposed, and those who think, no, it only, it's just some personal opinion thing. I mean, you really can't make it make any sense to have this idea of I can just personally have a different definition of what a contract is, or what money is, or what, it's all real. Okay, and you pretending money doesn't mean anything isn't going to change money meaning something. Those are kind of arguments can be made. So you're not arguing anti-natalists in the sense of you're not arguing with the political anti-natalism. You can argue with some personal lifestyle decision and say those people aren't going to win. But they're not going to win anyway, because they're not doing anything proactive. They're not doing anything constructive. I'm not going to just say proactive. That's kind of, that word almost sounds, it's rapey. That word doesn't work anymore. It's been so abused. Obviously the game is bigger than your own life. That's the point. And your little silly decisions about which way you walk, or whether you walk in circles, or whether you do this or whether you do that, doesn't have much to do with the fact that we're all going to vote on the rules of the game. So what you do, frankly, in your personal life doesn't mean anything much. Okay, you're a vegan, you're this, you're that. All of that's okay, but it doesn't mean much because it's the game rules that you have to change. Okay. The rules are saying it's okay to throw banana peels on the sidewalk. So until you change the rules, your banana peels aren't going to matter because there's 3 inches of banana peels. Something like that.
You're going to experience things that you would rather not experience. That's a moral decision that you can make, and that certainly sounds convincing and virtuous to me, and I would certainly not have kids for those reasons. I would much rather have highly, properly engineered experiences that have high levels of positive valence constantly. And that's just my preference from this location.
Right, and if you take your location and move it a few years into the future, you'll find that to be so trivial. Okay, this idea of just need to satisfy my ambitions, and so there's some personal experience that will make me. I will become a whole person if I get to fuck her. That kind of childish crap, like my life is going to be solved, if I can get the succubus to love me, or whatever. Okay, whatever it is you're chasing. The fact is, all that is just bullshit. Okay, it's not going to the next day you're not going to wake up in a better universe. Well, let's say next day is the wrong way. No, the next day, the honeymoon will last, but guess what? It will evaporate, and you won't be able to recreate it.
But does it really make a difference at the multiverse level? It seems like it doesn't. It doesn't make a difference anything that you do, because ultimately you're the same experiencer. What makes the most difference is whatever is...
Okay, so obviously that same experiencer part is just kind of silly, because I can make 500 of me, and then it's not the same experiencer, it's multiple experiencers. And they obviously at least add, maybe they don't multiply, but they add.
Caused from those highly intelligent locations, because they are going to have the most, they're going to dump the most experiential mass into those dreams and desires that they wanted.
So experiential mass, it just doesn't mean anything. The experience is just the jerk, okay, the little knee jerk of our sensations. They're mechanically very simple things happening in our brains. You don't need a big sophisticated story to create the sensations, the desire, the passion, the pulling of the thorn, out of you, the release of your tension and discomfort. All of that's a crude and simple thing that's been going on, in the animal kingdom for millions, hundreds of millions of years. So it'd be kind of silly to say you need this complex structure of a play, some complex story where you first make somebody dependent and you make them have a brain association where they like to stroke velvet, like that means something. And when you could do exactly the same thing, you can condition the brain to think stroking styrofoam, that gets them off. Doesn't, that's just all just bullshit. That doesn't have anything to do with just what the function is. And the function is, you're saying, why does this mechanism exist in the first place? Well, to make bugs better at killing bugs. This isn't for some, this isn't something to try to make to build on. This is the quicksand that evolution, a tool evolution made for the purpose of mass murder. It's it's not something to this is a Nazi flag, and there's no point in trying to make a tablecloth out of it and trying to pretty it up with painting daisies on it. It's insidiously stupid. There's no reason to try to turn it into something. It's shit. You don't make, you don't try to glue it and, let's see if we can make something out of it. No, you don't even play with it. Because all it has is, you have to create the negative before you can have the positive, so you're already lost. You can't make money, okay? This will not get you a profit. So why play with it?
To funnel configurations into. So we should be worried about what is it which has the most influence? What is it that has the most intelligence? What is that doing? And because it might not be something that you agree with from your location at present. So that's kind of just the entire friendly AI problem. And it does seem pretty futile, because we don't seem very smart. And once you actually have something which is very smart, that's already in charge anyway.
So again, these rules aren't being played by. So that's not what's running the civilization. Obviously, democracy means that you're not doing that anyway. Okay, the smart is going to be a small percentage of the voting pool. It's always going to get drowned out by the dumb. So we don't. There's no. Evolution died. Okay, with the invention of the condom. the fact that people could make rational choices, and so even all the medical technology completely is broken. Any evolution theory as being meaningful. So I don't see any point in. I mean, I would argue that the intelligent people are the only ones that can save us. They're the only ones that can get on the horses and actually, with torches, and stop the wolves from eating the sheeple or whatever. They're the only ones that can save the day, because it's not going to occur to the retards to even do it. They're not even going to see the problem, so they can't fix it. So the only thing that can do anything about it are intelligent people, and they've got to quit being little rainbow chasers and just start dealing with the fact that you're just trying to mitigate a crash. This thing just crashes. It can't do anything else. It's a bug planet. It'll do buggy things. The thing to do is to find a graceful way to apply the insecticide. Stop it.
At the ultimate level. And so the other thing that I want to clear up from one of my last videos is I said that once you degrade your computational specificity, so remember, you have high computational specificity over here, and then you have low computational specificity over here, and so therefore these are more common, not including whatever effects intelligence might have. And intelligence would be this highly specific stuff, because it requires so many complex algorithms and so much specific.
So again, I would make this counter argument that intelligence isn't the volume of stuff you know, it's the quality of what you know. So getting the fundamental foundational facts right is the first step. And if you failed at that step, then your intelligence is lost in this kind of multiverse bullshit. And it's wasting all of this neural energy on a construct that has nothing to do with, it's evolution, it's a bug planet, time is just linear. Yes, the future's bigger than the present. These are just logical arguments. If you're going to be an egg layer, you make nests before you lay the eggs. You don't say, well, in the future we'll make a nest, after you already laid the egg. That doesn't make any sense. We'll fix it in the future. Bullshit, you will.
Specific information in order to be intelligent. Regardless of whatever this is called, and dumping exponential mass into, this is just going to be common by default, those simple states, because dying organisms and organisms being born and organisms which are just very simple and having very simple experiences are going to be here. And so we can assume that.
And so it's just kind of an ironic thing, because all the storytelling is always for some sort of, orgasm. It's always for some sort of singularity. So it's always for the purpose of achieving some perfect moment, holding your gold medal at the Olympics. It culminates in something. It finishes in something. The process isn't any fun. Intelligence isn't fun to acquire. I mean, it's all this minutia. It's hard work. It's time-consuming. It's all of these things. So there's nothing positive about that road when you travel it. That's why people don't travel it. It's because it's kind of inconvenient. And you have to sort of have an obsession. You have to sort of have a real need for it to chase it. So you have to have some psychiatric kind of condition to even start with, that you need these answers, and you need this, and you need that to even pursue it. Because it's just so much easier to sit and eat potato chips and watch baseball or something. It's easier to do this other shit than to organize your thoughts and organize your the elements of your understanding, and to make that understanding more complete. To spend time to figure out what the Federal Reserve actually is, the Fed. To actually get the details of what the structure, what it's really made out of, what it really does, instead of just buying some, notion that it's just some evil force controlling our money, or printing money, or doing some kind of crap. All the rhetoric that is completely disconnected from the actual truth. So, I mean, these kind of arguments don't go anywhere. That, somehow the more complex story, 3 volumes of Wizard of Oz, versus pamphlet. I mean, the pamphlet is more than enough because the story isn't about anything complicated. The story is about, I want to go home.
These are more common than like the experience that I'm having, the experience that you're having, which has a lot of highly specific contents and processes. So the thing that I said was, we're not sure if this is painful or blissful. And that was kind of a simplified way of what I actually meant. Because obviously...
Yeah, well, I think that those are all... Now, when you go that far, you're taking your theoretical mishmash so far that, we have it backwards. We're actually having fun when we're being tortured. Because that's how the universe works. It has this inverse, times 2 squared thing in it or some kind of bullshit. No, I mean, it's just too stupid. I mean, we can all figure out that reward and punishment only works if there's the negative, the whip and the carrot. And the real argument is that there is no carrots, okay? We live in a carrotless universe. And all there is whip and no whip. Yeah, no whip is really good. But it's not a real good. Okay, it's not good that you are not being tortured. That's not a good. That should be something that, it was never a threat that you would be tortured.
Something which is the most simple self-aware process isn't going to have pain or suffering or pleasure or anything like this, which requires other complex self-modeling algorithms on top of subconscious, little events. So you have
robots. Come on. So he could have just said the robot. He could have said that word, just got this over with. We're just robots. We're just mechanical devices that are processing, okay? And we're doing it with this electricity and with neurons, and we're, creating roads, really. The roads you'll take physically is built by the road built inside of your understanding. And that's going to decide all of this. But it's already decided. I mean, the circumstances that you will encounter, the knee jerk can only do knee jerk, and that's all you're made out of is knee jerks. You're not made out of some special knee jerk. Some special little piece of your brain is going to interject at just the right moment and say, oh no, don't do exactly what you've been programmed to do. Do something completely different. Come on, it ain't going to happen. There's nothing but the mechanical process. There's nothing but where you were born. There's nothing but this location in time, in the sense of this is where the human race has evolved, and these are the social memes. We wear our shoes on our feet still. We haven't made hats out of them yet. Pretty close, but not yet. I mean, people are getting so fucking bizarre, I gotta say. Yeah, I give up, just because you can't really talk about how bizarre people are getting without somebody accusing you of being a racist or something, when all you're really arguing is cultural nonsense and rubbish and silliness. People think this is part of what an identity is, what having an identity is. And so it has nothing to do with they genetically had to be assholes. No, I don't think anybody genetically had to be an asshole. But anyway, there's no point.
Subconscious thing of pain or subconscious thing of pleasure, and then this has to bind to something in its future light cone, some complex self-modeling stuff, and it's going to affect that, and it's going to be...
So he has this life cone idea, where... But that's always figuring that there's some sort of apex that you're heading towards, and that you're going to jump from that apex into some new potentialities. And it's really just solid mush. I mean, there are no apex points. They're just arbitrarily pulled out by you to say this was the important event. And no, it wasn't more important than the calories you ate the day before that made that day possible, so it's all but anyway.
Remembered and experienced in some way. So if you are the most simple experience, you can't actually contain these things which are going to modulate your valence, because you're kind of like a blank slate. It's kind of like saying, it must contain some level of boredom, or it must contain some color, it must contain a tinge of red, and refusing to believe that experiences could exist without having a tinge of red. That's really the confusion, is to imagine that experiences must have some level of suffering, or they must all have some level of pleasure, whereas they don't. But nonetheless,
they're made out of it. So I would argue you can't really extract it. So if you look for it, you'll find it. So that's the whole meditation thing. You start, it'll make you more aware of your state, because you'll be more aware of the fact that, oh yeah, that is, my knee's a little stiff, and oh, that hurts. You'll find all kinds of condition that you're in that you didn't even realize you were in, okay, that you were just walking past. I mean, sometimes you're limping, when you're walking or something, and you say, oh, all of a sudden you realize, oh fuck, I'm limping. Yeah, but you're compensating already. You're compensating for something that isn't quite right, and that's your real condition. You're not completely, it's the subconscious hasn't told you you have to be aware of that misery, but the misery's still there. It's still a blight, and it's still marginalizing your function. Your psychic condition, okay, your mood, you could call it mood, exists, and sometimes it's not relevant. Like when I'm making this video, it's not really relevant because it's just a stream of connected, the little pieces of the truth that I have collected, and I'm just allowing them to arrange in different little arrangements, trying to draw the picture of the big truth, which is, shit, we're fucked. This isn't good. Stop making more of it.
Future experiences that come out of this, that appropriate whatever these simple computations are, that's what I'm asking. Are these that come out of that and remember this? Will they remember this fondly? That's my question. Will the algorithms that then exist on top of this and that are self-reflective remember this fondly? Will they have experienced this as being awesome and blissful, or will they remember, most of them, as this being full of dread and pain? I don't know, but if you look at babies, they come into the world crying, so I wouldn't bet on...
Yeah, I wouldn't bet on that. You can't fuel the system with anything else than deprivations, negatives. You have to break the surface to have to repair the surface, and that's all we're doing. That's all the brain's function is for, is fixing problems. That's why it exists. It's because it solves problems. Don't make a problem, you don't have a problem to solve. That's the simple solution. But that's all the brain is for, and that's all you'll see it do it right in your own life, because you solve a problem, and what happens almost the next millisecond, you're noticing new problems. You drive home your new Lamborghini, and then you start noticing, oh, there's a scuff on the tire, and there's, oh, look, it looks like there's a scratch over there, and that's a little bit crooked, and that piece of chrome isn't shiny as it should be. You'll start noticing the problems, because that's what your brain is designed to do, is find a problem and find a solution. That's the whole function. Don't make problems, we won't have to have fun solving them.
And being awesome.
Blah, 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 blah. coming from a guy who killed himself, right? And while he was making these videos, he was already kind of resigned to the end. So it is kind of funny. They would even make any arguments about life having any redeeming function or purpose or positive value. When he's conceding, he needs to manipulate it. So again, it's also another argument from this idea that here's a person in privilege, pretty much, you could tell. I mean, not living a very deprivated life in any of the superficial ways. I mean, not blighted with any obvious defects. Horrible. Not ugly, not diseased, and not missing an arm, not. Having what appears to be all of the potential you could want. I mean, if you were going to have a kid, it would be sort of the idea that, boy, I sure would like a kid who didn't drink and drive and do all these other dumbass things. So, it sort of looks like one of those kind of people, pretty like it came out the right way, and still fails. Fails to find function. So anyway. Interesting, just as a story, an individual lost to obscurity, just wasted. To me, that's the biggest ouch, is just the idea that all this effort to make an intelligence, and it just was wasted. And I would argue that half the waste was investing in a bunch of mushy concepts about reality and not paying much attention to it's just evolution, we're just bugs, and our brain exists to solve problems. These simple little statements. We feel because the brain evolution needs reward and punishment. It needs some way to oblige us to moderate our behavior to suit its purposes, which is the DNA getting replicated. Alright, anyway. Probably enough mush. The synthesis of value exists only in the attempt nature made to synthesize value, to create a copy of it. Didn't exist in reality, but it was trying to copy it, if you can get my drift. The value nature was applying, the structure was saying replication it needs to be selected for. There was no process to select because there was no way to value one over the other. And the way to make a value system was to impose on the organism some capacity to see the difference between good and bad. And the way to see the difference is to create good and bad sensations. Anyway, but there is no good. There's just bad and worse. Yeah, so if you think you're doing well, if you think you're comfortable, that's not a good. This is not going to fix anybody else's pain or even your own. But anyway, blah, 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 blah. So, yeah, that's enough. Weird sideline, I have to say, but anyway, interesting enough. So, till the next time, and such, and so forth, and whatnot. Sorry about the occasional cough thing. I don't know where that came from, but it's part of the sloppiness of life, unfortunately. So, till next time, and such. Maybe an economics video during the week. But it's just going to be the same story. It's all borrowed money. And if anybody ever has to actually cash a check, make it real, force the original writer of the check, to produce the real money. System, well, whatever. I'll do that later.